Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SnapRefund Podcast. My name is Anise Taylor,
And I'm Cody Eddings.
and we are back with another incredible episode. This time, we are with Curtis Goldsborough. You are in for a treat. So, let me just go ahead and jump into it and introduce Curtis. Curtis Goldsborough is the president of the National Insurance Inspection Services, an evolving technology and field service provider for P&C underwriting based in Fresno, California. He cut his teeth in insurance as an agency owner with Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan, where he became acutely aware of the friction and pain points associated with underwriting inspections. In 2013, he joined the National Inspection Services on a quest to forge a better path forward for personal lines underwriting. Curtis was instrumental in the development and launch of the NIIS self inspection app and workflow, which is now in production environments with over 18 carriers and MGAs around the country, including three of the top 10 PNC carriers in the United States. In his not so spare time, Curtis produces insurance video content on LinkedIn under the moniker of Loss Ratio, with a goal to engage, educate, and entertain and inspire insurance professionals around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Curtis Goldsborough.
Let's go,
Wow,
Curtis.
that is quite an intro, Anise. And I have to interject this right off the bat because I don't think I've ever verbalized this before to anyone, but Anise here was actually kind of instrumental in like creating and coming up with that moniker. Like nobody knows that, Anise.
Get out of here. I thought you already knew it had
Like
that.
that was not solidified until like we got together and did the Jumpstart Snap Refund project, which was like just a little over a year ago. But like, I didn't really have that solidified in my mind, and then you just kind of ran with it, man, and made it happen. So thank you. I owe you big time.
Well, you know what? Thank you for joining us for our podcast. This is a great payback, and we're happy to have you. So, Curtis, let's just jump into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your intro outlined it quite well, but I, started in insurance as a captive agent with Farm Bureau here in Michigan, which is where I live now. My company's based in Fresno, but COVID and remote work. So, but yeah, I started off as a captive agent with Farm Bureau and did that for just under 6 years, I think. And so that was, kind of where I learned the ropes of insurance. So that was obviously kind of all on the distribution side. And that was honestly it was fun and it was very beneficial, I think, for anyone in the industry, like being able to have some experience, perhaps outside of, kind of whatever little, space of the ecosystem that you're working in, can be really, really beneficial. And as you kind of outlined in the intro, as an agent, I got a front row seat and firsthand experience to the friction that can be caused by underwriting inspections. And so, that has been incredibly helpful in, kind of in my second career in insurance on the carrier vendor side.
That's amazing. So we're going to talk a bit about social media, I'm sure. We can't do a loss ratio and not talk about everything that goes into marketing and promoting that brand. But talk to me a little bit about the innovation around the NIIS and what sets you apart in the market.
Yeah, that's a great question, Cody. Self-inspection is something that obviously anyone who follows me on socials hears me talk about a fair amount, because I wholeheartedly believe that that's the future, a big piece of the future of personal lines underwriting. Traditionally for decades and decades, underwriting has relied on boots on the ground, physical field inspections. And, these are done by the millions every single year across the industry for both personal lines as well as commercial lines. And, that model has just becoming less and less sustainable, right? And fortunately, at the same time, as the model is becoming less sustainable, technology has evolved to the point where it has created options, right? And created opportunity. And so, a lot of the bottlenecks and friction points that this kind of traditional method has created, and quite frankly, a lot of those bottlenecks have always been there. They're kind of inherent in the process. but a lot of those things have been amplified, just as society has evolved and through COVID and all those types of things, a lot of those friction points have just become a lot stronger and a lot more evident, which only increases the value proposition that self-inspection brings to the table.
Yeah, that's really fantastic when you talk about what you guys are doing now and bringing that to the industry. But one of the things that I've noticed that's been the most challenging is getting the buy-in from the bigger carriers. So, how did you go about really getting that buy-in from the carriers, especially the big players? What were the steps that you took?
Yeah, it's a great question, Anise, and I certainly don't claim to have all the answers, right? A big part for us, honestly, we were one of those businesses where just the nature of the work that we do and the service that we provide, I hate to even phrase it this way, but like COVID was a silver lining for us, right? COVID really forced carriers, and especially the largest carriers, to take a really hard look at their processes around this, right? And I think we all remember what it was like, especially early on in COVID, right? Those first few months where it felt like the world was flipped upside down and nobody knew what was going to happen, right? And so underwriting teams were really scrambling, right? They felt like, hey, we can't send inspectors onto people's properties and into people's homes and businesses like we've done, forever. And so they were forced to look at alternative options, right? And, for our company, we fortuitously had already built our self-inspection app and platform a couple years prior to COVID. And obviously we had no idea what was coming down the pipe. But when COVID hit, like, we were ready to hit the ground running. Our product was already, we had 2 years under our belt with a lot of pilots and, had enough data to have kind of proven it out. Like we were beyond MVP and we were ready to hit the ground running. And so, again, that is a big part of what really helped kind of catapult us to scale very quickly. Quite frankly, was not much of our own doing. Again, that's not to say that it wouldn't have happened without COVID, but that was certainly a big catalyst for us.
Yeah, I see a lot of parallels in what we've seen as well. So when we work with carriers, a lot of times we notice that the message that could have been the same that we had around claim payment automation back in 2021, 2020, may have fallen a little shorter. And because of what happened with COVID and the way it disrupted traditional human in the loop processes, it really opened, I think, the appetite with a lot of carriers around, okay, well, what could it look like if it didn't look like the way it has before? So I'm sure we both got a lot of interesting stories around how that's changed. I'm curious, what's the impact you've seen, if you can share, on carrier loss ratios, no pun intended, and underwriting performance from implementing your self-inspection services?
Yeah, it's a great question, Cody. Thanks for asking that. And it's an interesting one from multiple different perspectives, right? The self-inspection obviously has an incredibly strong value proposition, and that is why it's kind of taking over personal lines underwriting anyway at this point by storm. And all carriers are jumping on board across the tier one carriers and trickling down through the super regionals and regionals, and even a lot of mutuals and smaller, single state folks are jumping on board, which again is very indicative of the value proposition, right? If it wasn't working, and if the value wasn't strong, then there wouldn't be this huge wave, of folks moving in that direction. The interesting thing on the underwriting side is that, in terms of actual, real world impact on loss ratios, right? And ultimately on combined ratios and underwriting profitability, underwriting is interesting. It's one of the beautifully complex pieces of insurance because anytime that you make a change in underwriting, it takes a long time, right? It's a really long tail to really understand the impact of that, right? And so even though we're really just a handful of years into some of the largest carriers, like really putting self-inspection at scale. And so it is still a little bit early to fully understand the, kind of the big picture impact of what this is going to have. we certainly have seen, to some extent with some of our carriers that have been, with us a little bit longer, some positive impact there in terms of loss ratios, but certainly we're not far enough along to have fully realized, what that's actually going to look like. But at the end of the day, even apart from, having really solid, data that's fully developed in that regard, um, the reality of self-inspection, the amount of data and the accuracy of the data that is able to be collected is so far superior to traditional methods, that, even beyond kind of initial indications that, that the industry is starting to see, there's no doubt, right? Like more data and higher quality data enables better underwriting, more accurate underwriting, right? Both from a pricing perspective, from a risk selection perspective. And so, again, I feel like incredibly confident that, that value proposition and the real world impact, is only going to become more evident and more strong in the next few years.
Well, I think what's really interesting when you talk about more evident and more strong, and we're on the topic of loss ratio, we spoke a little bit about how you got the name loss ratio. One thing for me that I will say is that before we even talked about whether your name should be loss ratio or anything else, I already saw that you were a star. You were developing amazing content. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how did you build that pretty unique sense of style in the content brand that you developed on LinkedIn with loss ratio, and how did that all start?
Yeah, it really started kind of the genesis of it, and these, really goes back to the InsurTech Connect conference, 2 years ago, in terms of me really leaning hard into content, right? For those who, have known me for a really long time, right? I mean, it was, 5 years ago was the very first, kind of InsurTech rap video, right? But at that time, and really for the first 3 years, I made a video, kind of debuted it right before ITC and kind of rode that wave, for a little while and got, a lot of exposure. But then I just kind of fell off the map again, and went back into obscurity through the rest of the year. And at ITC, 2 years ago, Gary Vee was there. He was the keynote speaker, and he just talked about how overlooked LinkedIn is, kind of from a B2B perspective for, business development. And so, I thought, you know what, I knew of Gary Vee and had listened to a fair amount of his stuff and kind of agreed with some and disagreed with other things that he has said over the years. But I thought I'm going to give it a shot. And it is something, I think something that was really beneficial and helpful for me through all of this is just the fact that I really, really enjoy it, right? Like I work on content, I say this often, right? But 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., pretty much 7 days a week, at least 6 days a week. It's just like it's become clockwork for me, right? Because as anyone who has created any content knows, and you guys are at the top of the pack here, it takes an immense amount of effort, right? There's just no getting around that. There are no shortcuts to solid content. There just aren't, right? So I put a ton of time and energy and effort into it. And if I didn't enjoy it, if I didn't enjoy that creative process, it would be incredibly difficult to keep up with. I don't think I would have the discipline to stick with it if I didn't enjoy it. But it has evolved significantly over time, right? And from pre-loss ratio and then kind of, coming up with loss ratio and deciding to run with that as a brand and whatnot. It has evolved significantly, and a lot of that is just, when creative inspiration hits, at 5 o'clock in the morning or at midnight, or wake up in the middle of the night. Or for me, a lot of that is scrolling social media, right? I spend a lot of time on social media, and that is a huge component of that is just looking for ideas, right? And not even necessarily looking, but just observing, right? And I'll see a reel or a meme or something that obviously is completely outside of the insurance realm, but something clicks in your head, right? And you're like, oh, I could do this with that, and that would be really funny. So it has evolved over time, and I think it will continue to evolve. Some of that is just kind of the evolution of social trends in general. But then beyond that, whatever I enjoy, right, and feel inspired by is what I try to create content around.
Well, it shows. It's clear that you're having fun. I had a ton of fun when we got to record our video last May, I think it was in San Diego.
Yeah.
It was really awesome. So it's obviously really evident that you bring humor and this sort of like breath into your content that you make. I'm curious, how do you handle, people who see content like what we've made, what you make, and they might be from outside the industry, and they see that there's this conflict, between the perception of insurance and the incentives of those within it. So if someone thinks that, you're shilling for carriers or something like that, what's been your approach? And I see even the way you respond to that can have humor in it sometimes. How do you handle all that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? I mean, as we all know, social media is absolutely the Wild West, right? Fortunately, I think generally speaking, LinkedIn as a platform is not quite as wild as the rest of social media in general. However, there is some there is some wild stuff that goes on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I have really from the beginning, I have tried to take an approach, which is an approach that I, personally feel very strongly about, right? Loss ratio obviously is a persona, but it's not a persona that is separated from my own personal convictions and beliefs, right? It's not a completely, made up thing that loss ratios ideas are my ideas, right? And
We
so
got to clip that soundbite right there. That's going to be great.
So, when I talk about the industry and talk about, issues and topics and subjects that I'm very passionate about, that is me as an industry professional, right? And I think that the whole loss ratio brand and persona certainly gives it more visibility, right, than maybe I could on my own. Um, and so, I think that's really powerful and that is beneficial. I certainly, everybody has their haters, on social, right? Loss ratio has a handful of them. But I work very hard to engage with those people to whatever extent they're willing to engage, right, in a meaningful way. And I have had incredible conversations in, comments on some of my posts, that drag on forever and going back and forth. And those are beneficial for me, right? I appreciate being challenged, right? And especially with my longer form content when I'm, kind of talking through, issues and whatnot, I always try to encourage people at the end, like, let me know in the comments, what do you think? Like, where am I wrong here, right? This is not just about, me throwing information out there or trying to, convince people that, that my ideas or thoughts are the best. Like, I'm learning and growing through this process, right? And hopefully most folks in the industry, have that kind of approach and mindset, right? Because there is no getting away from the fact that we are, as an industry, like, we are in uncharted territory. Like, the world is evolving around us incredibly rapidly, and that is creating very unique challenges, right? And while certainly, yes, the insurance industry is hundreds of years old, right? And there are kind of, principles of insurance that maybe will never change, right? But there are more dynamics at play today across the industry than there ever have been. And so if we're not all collectively learning and growing, and having tough conversations, right, and allowing ourselves to be challenged, and while we're hopefully challenging others, that's incredibly important. I mean, that's the engine of progress, right, and improvement. And as the world evolves, it's incredibly important that the industry as a whole evolves along with it, so that ultimately we have a sustainable system that works for everyone.
Yeah, a great answer. Well said. I mean, honestly, Curtis, since we first connected on the Jumpstart video, which I recommend to our listeners, go on YouTube and type in Jumpstart Snap Refund Loss Ratio Cody Eddings. I am telling you right now, you guys are going to be in for a treat. It was really a lot of fun. I think one of the things that you show me is how you bring creativity into the space. And so I thank you for that because being a part of that really encouraged us to continue to be creative with our brand, with what we're doing in the industry. So that's been a lot of fun. So, how we like to end the show is we kind of go through a rapid fire round where we ask you some questions. So, these are going to be quick shot questions. Please provide us with some quick answers, and we'll just have a little fun with it. Is that all right with you?
Let's do it.
All right,
Shoot.
let's do it. So, what is your favorite insurance buzzword that you secretly hate?
I hate to say this, but it's gotta be AI right now. Artificial intelligence.
Of course.
I see
And
that.
and not to say that I hate it in and of itself, but it is an absolutely fascinating topic. That obviously is on everyone's mind today, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it evolves in the coming years.
Absolutely. What's the most underrated insurtech trend right now?
Underrated insurtech. I mean, I don't know if I can call this an insurtech trend, but social, man, LinkedIn, right? Like I am shocked and amazed at how underutilized it continues to be because it is an incredibly powerful tool specifically for insurtechs who are, trying to get into the space and wherever you're trying to fit. It is incredibly powerful to gain exposure and to have a voice and to build authority. So yeah, I've got to say LinkedIn.
Yeah, good answer. One person in the industry who inspires you.
I mean, apart from Anise Taylor and Cody Eddings, I mean, wow, one person? That is really, really tough. I feel like I could name 100 people. I mean, in terms of like just brute insurance knowledge and understanding, and like when I'm confused about something or I'm gonna put out a piece of content and I want to run it by somebody who like really knows their stuff before I throw it out there and make a fool of myself, I gotta go with Nick Lamparelli, Insurance Nerds. Absolutely love Nick. He's an incredible resource. So yeah, I'll stick there.
What's one thing you like to do amongst the many we've all seen outside of work to unwind? What's your favorite thing right now as a hobby?
You know, there was a post the other day that someone had made. I think it was Nick Ayers from over at Glovebox, and I don't even remember the question that he posed, but and Nick is an incredibly, creative chief marketing officer and who I've respected for a long, long time. And but I commented on his post and said, I stalk and entice aquatic creatures and occasionally eat them. So that was my way of saying I like to fish. I mean, people have seen that in my content, but I, am blessed to live on a lake here, and I fish pretty much every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes off the dock. But like that is my happy place, my outlet. That's where I do my clearest thinking, and sometimes even try to incorporate some content into it. So
That's a great spot. And I will tell you this, your lake, your house on the lake is my hashtag goals. Like when I see it, I'm like, okay, when I grow up, that is what I aspire to be. Curtis, thank you so much. Just rounding up the show and closing, where can people follow you and learn more about what you do as well as the NIIS?
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, LinkedIn is where I hang out the most. Across other socials, you can certainly find me over on X or on YouTube. Um, but yeah, all of my contact information can be found there. Reach out via DM, and I as I continue to create content and my network, is growing exponentially, and I love that. I love being connected with folks across the insurance ecosystem and trying to stay aware of everything that's going on, and ultimately, hopefully inspiring people and being inspired by people and being educated by people. Yeah, I love it. So, but yeah, LinkedIn is where you'll find me the most.
Absolutely. Any final message for other professionals in the insurance industry looking to make their mark?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've said it, I sound like a broken record, but lean into content. It has been really transformational for me personally, professionally, for my business. And I know that it can be scary and it can feel overwhelming. But just like anything, repetition, right, is the key to learning. It's just like staying fit or staying in shape. You exercise those content creation muscles, and you will get more comfortable with it over time. And I think the value there, the opportunity there is huge. So I would encourage people with that. Put yourself out there, create content. You have a voice, make it known and flex those muscles and you'll reap the benefits.
I love that. Wise words from a wise man. Curtis, thank you so much for joining us on the Snap Refund Podcast. We really appreciate having you. Please make sure you guys follow Curtis, also known as Loss Ratio, and see the incredible things that he's doing in the space. Thank you so much for joining us on the Snap Refund Podcast, and we will catch you later. Peace.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.